A catastrophe of historic scale has unfolded across southern Thailand, a region normally known for its vibrant cities, its coastline, and its dense tropical landscapes, but now marked by devastation not seen in decades. This unfolding disaster, centered around the provinces of Songkhla, Nakhon Si Thammarat, Phatthalung, and several neighboring areas, surged into global attention in late November and early December 2025. In cities like Hat Yai, one of the largest urban and commercial hubs of the south, entire streets transformed into canals. In rural districts, isolated villages were cut off for days. And across the region, heavy monsoon rains driven by unusually powerful atmospheric conditions triggered massive flooding, landslides, and widespread infrastructure collapse. As of the most recent government and international agency assessments available in early December 2025, confirmed fatalities range from roughly 145 to just over 160 people, with several million residents affected in varying degrees. The economic damage is already estimated to exceed 500 billion baht across the southern region, a staggering sum that captures only a fraction of the long-term consequences that lie ahead. These events did not happen in a single, sudden moment. They were the result of days of relentless rainfall beginning in mid to late November, rainfall that refused to ease even as forecasts warned of worsening conditions. The impact was especially severe in the southern peninsula of Thailand, a narrow strip of land bordered by the Andaman Sea on one side and the Gulf of Thailand on the other. The geography here funnels moisture-laden winds into mountainous interiors and dense valleys where rainfall can accumulate with incredible speed. Hat Yai, located in Songkhla province, is particularly vulnerable due to its low-lying basin terrain intersected by canals designed to manage flooding. But by late November 2025, the volume of water pouring down from the mountains rapidly exceeded the city's drainage capacity. As rivers overflowed and runoff surged into urban zones, streets disappeared beneath muddy currents. Motorbikes, cars, market stalls, and entire storefronts were swallowed by water that rose first to the knees, then the waist, then above the chest in the hardest-hit neighborhoods. Authorities issued warnings, but many residents had little time to prepare or evacuate. Within hours, the flooding spiraled beyond the scale of normal monsoon season events. Reports highlighted that some parts of Hat Yai received up to several hundred millimeters of rainfall within a short period, among the highest daily totals recorded this season. As power outages spread, telecommunications became unreliable. Families took shelter on rooftops, in attics, and on the upper floors of homes, waiting for rescue teams that struggled to navigate submerged roads. Emergency workers, volunteers, civil defense units, and local residents improvised with inflatable boats, modified pickup trucks, and makeshift rafts. Schools, temples, and public buildings turned into shelters, hosting thousands of displaced individuals. The timeline of the disaster is crucial for understanding the scale of the crisis. Around November 24 to 26, 2025, rainfall intensified dramatically across the southern region. By November 27 to 29, water levels in many urban and rural zones began to breach critical thresholds. Hat Yai's business district, densely packed with hotels, restaurants, and shopping centers, faced heavy inundation, causing significant economic losses. In Nakhon Si Thammarat, the situation was equally dire. Rivers surged over their banks, sweeping through agricultural areas and flattening crops. Landslides struck hillside communities, burying homes and cutting off entire villages. Road collapses and washed-out bridges isolated districts, leaving some communities reachable only by helicopter or boat. The combination of flash floods, mudslides, and infrastructure failure contributed directly to many of the confirmed casualties. By early December 2025, as assessments became more complete, a clearer picture emerged. Between 145 and just over 160 deaths had been documented across the region, a number expected to rise slightly as rescue workers reach previously inaccessible areas. Several million residents were affected in varying ways, some briefly displaced, others losing their homes entirely. Over 1 million households experienced direct material damage. The Thai Ministry of Finance released preliminary estimates indicating that total economic losses across the southern provinces exceed 500 billion baht, factoring in private property, public infrastructure, tourism losses, commercial damage, agricultural collapse, and long-term rebuilding costs. For comparison, this scale places the disaster among the costliest weather-related events in Thailand's modern history. Recovery efforts began almost immediately, but the challenges were immense. Restoration of electricity and water supplies was a priority in early December. Government agencies coordinated with the military, local organizations, and volunteer groups to distribute food, water, medicine, and essential supplies. Temporary shelters overflowed. The government announced financial aid packages, including immediate payments for affected households, compensation for families of the deceased, and low-interest loans to help small businesses begin the long process of recovery. Additional support came from charitable organizations and royal donations aimed at bolstering hospitals and providing relief funds. The emotional toll on survivors is impossible to quantify in numbers alone. In Hat Yai, stories emerged of hotel owners who watched water sweep through their lobbies and destroy years of investment in a matter of minutes. Small shop operators returned to their businesses to find walls collapsed and merchandise ruined. Families described the terror of hearing landslides rumble down the mountains at night, shaking homes and tearing away entire slopes. In rural areas, farmers discovered their fields buried under layers of mud, debris, and broken tree trunks, the remains of landslides that cascaded down hillsides when the saturated earth could no longer hold. For many communities, the loss of livestock, equipment, and irrigation systems represents not only immediate hardship but a long-term threat to their livelihoods. Now that the essential context, locations, timeline, and verified information have been established, the story of this disaster can unfold in its full depth. What follows is a complete narrative capturing the human experience of the catastrophe, the atmospheric forces behind it, the moments of terror and solidarity, and the defining struggle of communities across southern Thailand as they faced both destruction and resilience. Across southern Thailand, the air had held a wait for days before the storm reached its worst. Locals, familiar with monsoon rhythms, sensed that something was different. The sky stayed dark long after sunrise. The humidity felt dense, almost metallic, and the usual pattern of rain showers followed by brief clearing was replaced by an unbroken curtain of pouring water. Meteorologists began to issue increasingly urgent warnings as satellite imagery revealed a massive plume of moisture spiraling toward the peninsula. The combination of monsoonal winds, regional pressure systems, and warmer-than-average sea surface temperatures created a setup for extreme rainfall, conditions worsened by broader climate trends that scientists have been observing throughout Southeast Asia. When the rain finally intensified, it did so with brutal speed. In coastal zones facing the Gulf of Thailand, winds drove sheets of rain horizontally, creating whiteout conditions that made visibility nearly impossible. Inland, water began to collect in the foothills and run down toward the valleys. Small streams transformed into violent torrents. Residents in low-lying neighborhoods heard the roar of water before they saw it, a sound like static mixed with thunder, growing louder by the minute. Some attempted to move belongings to higher ground, cooking equipment, furniture, appliances, but in many households, the water rose far too quickly. In Hat Yai city center, the transformation was surreal. Markets that normally bustled with vendors and shoppers were swallowed by water that surged into alleys and parking lots. Cars floated and drifted, crashing into storefront windows. Motorcycles toppled like dominoes. The famous Kim Young Market saw its underground levels completely submerged. Hoteliers rushed to evacuate guests to higher floors as lobby entrances turned into indoor waterfalls. Power outages occurred in rapid succession, plunging large sections of the city into darkness even during daylight hours. Emergency sirens echoed through the streets, though they were often swallowed by the violent sound of the storm. Outside the cities, the situation was even more perilous. In the mountainous districts of Nakhon Si Thammarat and Phatthalung, landslides triggered by saturated slopes tore through villages. Trees snapped like matchsticks. Boulders, soil, and debris swept downhill with unstoppable force. Some villagers were buried instantly. Others fled through knee-deep water carrying children, elderly family members, or whatever they could save in plastic bags tied high above their heads. Rescue workers attempting to reach these zones faced enormous danger. Roads cracked under the pressure of the waterlogged soil, collapsing without warning. Bridges were rendered unusable. Helicopters deployed to reach isolated communities battled fierce winds, often forced to turn back. As the days passed, the human toll grew. Hospitals saw an influx of patients suffering from injuries, infections, exposure, and waterborne diseases. Medical staff worked around the clock, improvising treatment spaces as some facilities battled power disruptions or partial flooding. Volunteers and community leaders stepped in where official systems were overwhelmed. In many neighborhoods, it was neighbors who rescued neighbors, pulling people from floodwaters, delivering food, sharing generators, or turning schools and temples into safe havens. International attention grew as images and videos emerged, drones capturing entire districts underwater, families waving from rooftops, evacuation lines of people wading through chest-deep floodwaters, and aerial views of farmlands transformed into vast, muddy lakes. These scenes echoed disasters from past decades but with a scale more widespread than usual. One of the most painful aspects of the crisis was the economic blow dealt to southern Thailand, a region heavily dependent on tourism, agriculture, transport, and trade. Hat Yai alone, often considered the commercial heart of the south, saw billions of baht in damage to hotels, malls, restaurants, storage facilities, and wholesale markets. Many business owners have described the losses as unprecedented. Even when the waters begin to recede, cleaning, repairs, and rebuilding will take weeks or months. Some establishments may never reopen. Meanwhile, in rural districts, families who rely on farming face uncertainty about the next season. Crops such as rubber, oil palm, rice, and fruit trees were destroyed. Irrigation channels were clogged or obliterated by landslides. Livestock drowned in barns and pens. Agricultural equipment rusted or broke down under prolonged exposure to water. The financial impact will ripple through these communities long after the floodwaters disappear. Despite this devastation, scenes of resilience continue to emerge. Volunteers have coordinated food distribution chains that stretch across districts. Students and teachers have cleaned debris from schools. Fishermen have let their boats for rescue operations. In Hat Yai, groups of young people have worked together to distribute clean drinking water to apartment buildings whose supplies were cut off. Local monks have held shelters open day and night, offering not only space and food but emotional comfort for families who lost everything. Government response has included emergency funding, compensation programs for families of victims, and teams deployed for infrastructure repair. Engineers are assessing the state of bridges, roads, and water management systems. Urban planners are studying the vulnerabilities revealed by the disaster, especially in Hat Yai, where drainage infrastructure was overwhelmed. Officials have emphasized that reconstruction must include long-term resilience planning, not just immediate restoration. As of early December 2025, water levels have started to slowly recede in several areas, allowing rescuers to reach previously inaccessible zones. But new challenges arise as the floodwaters pull back. Stagnant pools become breeding grounds for disease. Mud and debris clog entire neighborhoods. The smell of dampness, mixed with sewage and rotting vegetation, hangs in the air. Families returning to their homes often find layers of mud covering their floors, ruined appliances, broken walls, and possessions lost beyond salvage. For many, the psychological toll is heavy, the sudden collapse of normal life, the fear of future storms, the uncertainty about how long recovery will take. Yet even through these overwhelming circumstances, the people of southern Thailand continue to show remarkable strength. In many interviews, survivors say the same thing: we will rebuild. We always rebuild. There is a cultural resilience deeply rooted in communities that have endured decades of monsoon seasons, tropical storms, and natural disasters. What sets this event apart is not only its scale but the urgency it conveys about the future, a reminder of the escalating power of climate-driven extreme weather and the need for stronger protections, better forecasting, and more resilient infrastructure. This disaster will be remembered not only for the destruction it caused but for the unity it revealed. Across the flooded streets of Hat Yai, in the landslide-torn slopes of Nakhon Si Thammarat, and in the shelters that now host thousands of displaced residents, stories of courage, generosity, and sacrifice continue to emerge. They stand alongside the tragic stories of lives lost and families shattered, forming the full picture of a region that will carry the scars of this event for years to come, but will also carry the memories of how its people stood together in one of the hardest moments in recent history. As the long road to recovery continues, southern Thailand faces a monumental task: rebuilding homes and livelihoods, restoring infrastructure, replanting fields, and strengthening systems to withstand future storms. But for now, the world watches as rescue teams work tirelessly, communities support one another, and a region begins the slow, painful, determined process of rising again from the waters.